Dave Portnoy, in an interview with TMZ, exposes Sophia Franklin and Alice Cooper for trying to allege sexual harassment in the workplace, and it's absolutely despicable. I'm going to show you some clips of the interview, and then we'll break it down here.
They were under contract, the two of them, and they stopped working. They just stopped putting out the podcast, stopped doing anything. We're leaving breadcrumb clues for their audience that there are major issues behind the scene. They legally couldn't talk about it. This is when Sophia and Alex were in lockstep, thinking they were going to break their contract with Barstool, and they had already shopped around their deal. They were already going to other networks, podcast networks, shipping deals while they were still fully under contract with us. And then we did have a rooftop meeting during COVID, and I basically offered them, which is one of the best deals I've ever offered to anybody, is I'll cut your contract, I'll lengthen your contract down, I'll offer you a lot more money, and I'll give you the IP when you leave, but we need you gals to get back to work. Alex accepted that deal and also told me Sophia never would. Sophia was moving the goalpost, and the person shopping this deal around for them was Sophia's boyfriend, who is affectionately known in our world as Soup Man, Peter Nelson, an HBO executive who was acting as basically the manager for these two in this podcast, selling it or trying to, specifically to Wondery, even though they're under contract with us. And when that was brought up, I said, well, how are you going to do that? You're under contract. We'd sue you. You know that. And she said the plan that was hatched was to allege sexual harassment, toxic workplace to get out of the contract so they can leave.
So a couple things stand out from what Dave said here. I guess Sophia, Alex wanted out of the contract and wanted to do their own thing. They felt, I guess, somewhat restricted being a part of Barstool, even though Barstool was the platform that gave them the audience of, the reason why they're making so much money from Call Her Daddy. So they're being a little non-appreciative, but anyways, they try to go about it by wanting out of the contract. And I guess Sophia's boyfriend at the time, not sure if they're still boyfriend, girlfriend, but, I guess he was their manager, and they wanted to do whatever it took to get out of the contract and or request more money. Now, Dave Portnoy, he said that, he gave them a new contract, more money, more freedom, whatever it took so that they could keep the show on Barstool.
At this point, Alex and I had realigned. So she was kind of coming clean with how they were going to do everything. I mean, if it ever got to that point that it went to a legal issue and they were saying these things about us, their crowd would have believed them. They didn't even really know who I was or Barstool was. So it really would have been a horrific situation to be in.
Now, it seemed like Alex was totally cool with that. Maybe not. Maybe she's just saying that. But Sophia, I find it kind of ironic. She's no longer on the show anymore now that they've moved on. I guess she, from the jump, wanted to get out of Barstool and wanted to just be her and Alex and didn't want to be, I guess, restricted from Barstool and Dave and having all those rules. At the end of the day, they just wanted more money. And for them to get the amount of money that they wanted, they either needed to be independent or put themselves out there for other, I guess, platforms to give them more money for a bigger contract there. Much like Pat McAfee, he got a contract from ESPN. Now he's making $50-60 million a year. So that's what ended up happening. But the meat and potatoes of the story is the fact that both of these women try to allege sexual harassment in the workplace. And this is a common kind of excuse that women would do in a work environment to get what they want. And it shouldn't surprise anyone that that's the route that they try to take.
How did you react when she said, look, I'm going to allege sexual harassment against
they had talked about doing it, but she never actually did it.
But did you just, but I mean, the threat itself, I'm wondering how you reacted to that.
I was somewhat shocked, obviously, but we had deteriorated to a point like nothing really surprised me. And I was more concerned at that point with getting the podcast back up and going and mending the relationship as best we can. It was stunning to hear, but at the same time, if you even look at what was being posted during this time of them not working, they were saying they couldn't legally talk about anything. They had all these kind of hidden messages, the Kesha. So it wasn't the most shocking thing. I mean, it was shocking to me that they thought they could just break the contract and go somewhere else. So clearly there had to be some sort of plan in place that they were planning on doing.
I guess Alex was in on this initially, and then she realized Sophia is a crazy bitch and was like, you know what? I'm going to give Dave a forewarning before we actually try to carry this out. I feel like Alex was in too deep on this, maybe. I don't know. Maybe, who knows? Maybe she's lying about the whole thing. Maybe she did actually want to claim that there's workplace harassment in there, even though there clearly probably wasn't. Like clearly we know what's actually going on. They're going to use any excuse, any reason to get out of that contract, to breach a contract. And really, Dave just wanted her employees to fucking do their jobs because they're under contract. And at the end of the day, it's money.
And so she came back to the table saying, the deal you offered us was fair and I want to take it. Sophia is never going to take it. And they're moving the goalposts, and her boyfriend is kind of the puppet master, and I don't want to go along with it, but they won't budge. So it's under that light, too, that this story was almost told in a way like, you know, I don't know the conversations they had behind closed doors, but it didn't, sounded like it was their plan that they concocted, and she wanted out.
You know, weak move on their part. And the fact that this is coming out, you know, kind of confirms everything. And if Alex, you know, she's having such a big audience and she's influencing these other women that I'm assuming have jobs, they don't have like a podcast, or they're not doing some other shit. They have jobs. Now they feel like they can do whatever they want, allege workplace harassment, if their job is inconvenient to them at that very time. But this has been going on for years and years, and nothing's going to change. But I do think these companies are becoming more weary about sexual harassment because of the fact that there's been so many cases where that hasn't been the case, and these women are just saying they get harassed, but without any real evidence. I think we're kind of past the age where we're believing women everything that they say, and we're more so looking at it as, okay, you could say this stuff, but is there actual evidence backing that up? You could just be saying that just to get out of the workplace, just to get severance, just to get these other benefits that goes along with getting fired, wrongfully fired. I don't even know why Dave is still friends with Alex after everything that's happened with that saga before they left Barstool. But I guess, you know, time heals all. I don't think he's that close with Sophia, because it seems like she was the ringleader, or at least we think she's the ringleader in terms of carrying this procedure out of saying you got sexually harassed in the workplace. But you can kind of see just from looking at these two women that they were going to try to weasel themselves out of the contract, that they'd be the kind of woman that would say these kind of stuff and say all this bullshit that's actually not true about their company, and trying to make it out to be like Barstool are the bad guys, like Dave's the bad guys. And they have quite an audience that would be able to back them, like they said in that interview, so that they could be seen as good guys and Barstool would be seen as the bad guys, like they're sexually harassing them and they're just so innocent, they're the victims and all in this whole situation here. But I'm not sure if Alex and Sophia have came out with a reply in the podcast, or maybe in another podcast, or maybe they said something else that would kind of contradict like Dave's story, but I'm pretty sure this is the real story coming out. I don't think Dave would lie about this, especially he has nothing to gain. Sophia, well, specifically Alex, since she still has the podcast, has everything to lose if all of a sudden she's like, yeah, no, we tried to do that and it didn't work. Shucks. We'll try again next time. But yeah, I highly doubt that this story would be wrong, to be honest. We're finally learning that you can't believe everything a woman says, especially in the workplace. So yeah, this is just another example.